Daryl and I had been together for 10 months when he showed up at my place last Wednesday morning. He looked nervous, running his hands through his hair the way he does when he wants something. He said his Toyota was making strange grinding noises, and he didn't want to risk it breaking down on his way to a job interview at an insurance office downtown. This position, he explained, paid far more than his job at Target. I handed over the keys to my BMW without hesitation. I was glad he was finally trying to move on to something better. The next day, Thursday, he texted to say the interview had gone well and they wanted him back for another round. He asked to keep my car another day since his Toyota was still in the shop. I agreed and took the bus to work. By Thursday night, he was excitedly texting me that they had offered him the job, but he had one more meeting to attend. On Friday, he said the company wanted him to attend a team-building retreat at a resort upstate, with all expenses covered. Weekend work seemed odd, but I thought maybe that's just how the insurance industry worked. I agreed, though I was growing frustrated without my car. By Sunday, I told him I needed my BMW back for early client meetings Monday. He quickly replied, saying the company was so impressed with him that they had invited him to their corporate retreat for final interviews with senior partners. He promised to return Tuesday evening. Something about his story didn't sit right. Daryl had never mentioned applying to an insurance company, and the idea of weekend retreats for an entry-level candidate seemed far-fetched. Curious, I checked the BMW Connected Drive app on my phone. The GPS showed my car parked at the Ocean View Grand Resort, 3 hours north. The name sounded familiar, and then I remembered why. Scarlett Morrison, a girl from his college he sometimes liked posts from, had been sharing Instagram stories all weekend from a scenic resort. I looked at her posts. Saturday morning, lounging by a pool with an ocean view. Saturday evening, cocktails at sunset. Sunday morning, a picture that made my stomach drop. It showed a set of BMW keys on a marble countertop with the caption, "Best boyfriend ever surprised me with this getaway." The key fob was unmistakably mine. I had carved my initials into the leather years ago. On Monday, I called in sick, borrowed my dad's pickup, and drove to the resort. My car was parked there, just like in Scarlett's posts. Inside, I saw Daryl and Scarlett by the pool. He had his arm around her, and they looked comfortable, like this wasn't new. I sat at the bar overlooking the pool. The area was quiet so I could hear their conversation clearly. Daryl pulled out his phone and showed Scarlett messages. I heard him say, "My ex is so pathetic she'd give me her organs if I asked. Some people are just born to be used. Watch this. I'll text her for money right now, and she'll send it without question." Scarlett laughed as he bragged about using my credit cards, my airline miles, and my money for their getaway. Right then, my phone buzzed with a message from him asking for $500 for unexpected fees at the retreat. He was texting me for money while sitting 20 feet away, mocking me to another woman. I recorded everything on my phone, every word. That night, I drove home in silence. By Tuesday morning, he texted saying he'd gotten the job and wanted to celebrate. I pretended to be excited, but I had already laid out months of receipts and statements on my dining table. It was obvious. Daryl had been using my accounts for months, for dinners, clothes, trips, even tickets for outings I never attended. When he came over, I confronted him. He tried to spin more lies, claiming he'd pay me back or that the charges were work-related. Then I played the recording. His voice filled the room, mocking me, admitting to stealing from me, and bragging about using me. His face drained of color, but instead of apologizing, he got angry. He accused me of invading his privacy, claimed it was all taken out of context, even tried to say Scarlett had pressured him into badmouthing me. He gaslit me for hours, alternating between excuses, fake tears, and insults. Finally, he snapped. He hurled every insecurity I'd ever shared at me, calling me clingy, pathetic, and unlovable. He insisted I should be grateful he even dated me. I told him he had until Friday to repay me or I'd take legal action. He laughed, saying I couldn't prove anything. Then, as if nothing had happened, he left with my car keys, claiming he needed it for the week. But I was prepared. My dad works with the sheriff's department maintaining their vehicles, so I filed a theft report. By Friday morning, deputies pulled Daryl over. He was arrested for driving a stolen car, and when searched, they found 2 of my credit cards in his wallet, cards I never gave him. The situation escalated quickly. Since then, he's blown up my phone with calls and texts, ranging from begging to threats. Scarlett even posted an Instagram story outside a police station, complaining about the psycho who caused all this. Meanwhile, his family has been relentless. His mother Connie called, sobbing, saying I was ruining her son's life over a mistake. She excused everything he did, blaming stress, immaturity, even his father's death years ago. His sister Emily went the opposite route, bombarding me with texts, calling me crazy, threatening to ruin my reputation, and claiming Daryl was planning to leave me anyway. Then their Uncle Donald called, trying to negotiate. He suggested I let Daryl repay me in installments and avoid pressing charges, framing it as a misunderstanding instead of theft. But here's the truth. Daryl lied, stole, and humiliated me for months. He wasn't confused, stressed, or immature. He was deliberate. And while his family wants to protect him, I refuse to excuse what he did. Actions have consequences, and he's finally facing his... Donald eventually admitted his nephew was not just careless, but a habitual liar and thief. He revealed this wasn't Daryl's first offense. Back in college, Daryl was caught using his roommate's credit card for food and games. But his family persuaded the victim not to press charges. A couple of years ago, he borrowed rent money from his grandmother and never paid her back. But she forgave it, because family is family. This pattern of exploiting trust wasn't new. It had been enabled for years by relatives covering for him instead of holding him accountable. Now, they were trying to do the same thing with me. The most frustrating part was how they painted me as unreasonable, like I was some cold-hearted woman ruining a good man over a misunderstanding. They flipped the narrative, making Daryl the victim and me the villain. On Friday, Connie called again, this time with a softer tone. She asked if there was anything she could do to fix this without police involvement. She offered to repay the stolen money herself, suggesting $500 a month until the full amount was covered, plus an apology letter from Daryl and a promise of no further contact. At first, it sounded almost reasonable, but when I explained the total theft exceeded $4,000, her attitude changed. Suddenly, she demanded proof, questioned whether some expenses were shared, and implied I was inflating the numbers. When I refused to negotiate, she accused me of being spiteful, claiming I wanted revenge instead of justice. She argued I was selfish for not considering how this would affect her whole family. By the end, she was shouting that I clearly never cared about Daryl, or I wouldn't be willing to destroy his life over this. She even suggested that if I truly loved him, I would have worked it out privately, instead of going to the police. The gaslighting from his family has been relentless. Calls, texts, and social media messages, all designed to guilt me into backing down. But honestly, their pressure only confirms I made the right choice. They want me to believe that stealing from someone you supposedly love isn't serious, that lying and cheating are just minor mistakes, and that I should feel lucky to fund his lifestyle. This morning, the prosecutor updated me after reviewing Daryl's phone. They found photos of my credit cards, explaining how he got my details. There were also texts between him and Scarlett about their weekend trip, discussing how much of my money they could spend and what excuses to give me. Even worse, it turns out Scarlett wasn't just a friend. She'd been his on-and-off girlfriend for over a year. Messages showed them talking about being in love and planning a future together since last February. So, not only was Daryl stealing from me, but I was unknowingly the other woman in my own relationship. When his family learned the truth, they panicked. Their meltdown was intense. Connie called Saturday morning in tears, this time genuinely shaken. The prosecutor had shown them the photos, the texts, and the proof that Daryl had lied to everyone. He told his family I was just a casual fling while he pursued Scarlett seriously. For 10 months, I thought we were building something, while he was telling them I was simply a convenient hookup funding his lifestyle. Connie admitted she was embarrassed for defending him, but still found ways to push blame onto me, asking if I'd missed red flags or ignored warning signs. Even when she tried to appear supportive, the victim blaming crept back in. That call ended when my mom overheard Connie crying on speakerphone. She took the phone and told Connie directly what she thought of a family that raises a son to steal and then attacks his victims. My mom reminded her that she raised 2 kids alone after my dad lost his job, and neither of us grew up stealing or lying. Connie tried her usual sob story, but my mom shut it down, pointing out the harassment, stress, and even damage to our family's reputation this ordeal caused. When Connie suggested a family solution, my mom made it clear that time had passed. The courts would handle this now. She ended the call by warning them not to contact me again or face harassment charges. Later, my mom told me she was proud of me for standing my ground. My dad echoed that when he got home, saying he hated seeing me hurt, but admired that I was fighting back. On Sunday, Emily, Daryl's sister, came over, this time apologetic. She admitted she'd defended him for too long and explained how their family always excused his actions instead of confronting them. She confessed she'd suspected something was off in my relationship, but brushed it aside to keep family peace. She also revealed she confronted Daryl in jail. His response? Zero remorse. He was bitter about getting caught, resentful that I stood up to him, and mocked me as the type of desperate woman who deserved to be used. He even twisted private, vulnerable conversations into evidence of me being unstable, framing himself as the victim. Hearing that was painful, but it also proved how deliberate his manipulation had been. He'd been constructing this false narrative for months, preparing to justify leaving me for Scarlett. Monday, the prosecutor updated me again. They'd offered Daryl a plea deal: repay everything, do community service, and stay away from me. He refused, insisting he'd done nothing criminal. His lawyer argued that because we were in a relationship, my financial accounts were his to use. Thankfully, the recording I made at the resort, where he openly bragged about exploiting me, is strong evidence against him. Donald later called, desperate to settle. He offered to repay double the amount stolen, cover therapy costs, and write a family apology if I dropped the charges. When I asked why, he admitted their social circle was starting to question them, and they wanted to avoid public embarrassment. I refused. I told him money wasn't the point. Accountability was. Donald accused me of being unforgiving and vengeful, but I reminded him that Daryl's future is the result of his own choices, not mine. The last attempt came directly from Daryl. He texted, "You destroyed everything we could have had together." Even facing felony charges, he refused to accept responsibility. I blocked him immediately. Now, the case is moving forward. Daryl will face trial for theft and fraud. His family can deal with the social fallout of enabling his behavior. For me, the most powerful moment was realizing I wasn't the pushover he assumed I was. I had enough self-respect to hold him accountable, and watching his illusion crumble was a victory in itself.